Sam, you talk a lot about being empathetic, and particularly in some instances when we're working with doctors' offices, it's about being empathetic to people that are elderly, as Lucas calls me.
Sure.
But how do you apply that knowledge and learning? Because you're a pastor at some point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to be able to talk as an empath in this. Yeah. So talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to throw another quote out there because it's fun. And then we shared it outside as well. Yeah. And so it's knowledge is knowing that tomato's a fruit, and wisdom is knowing that it doesn't belong in a fruit salad.
Yeah, right.
And so I think there's just so much beauty in acknowledging that like these people have something that we need, and that like we can't throw that out. Like we lose so much when we don't engage with that community. And I think that there's, even in work, there's a gap there where the people that have been there, the seasoned employees, they kind of like look at the younger generation as like, oh, these young kids, they don't want to work hard and blah, blah, blah. And then the young people are like, oh, these old people are stuck in their ways. If we could see each other as assets instead of these problems and just say, hey, what can I learn from you? Like, what experiences do you have? And like, again, what Lucas is saying, it's like, I can look at the older generation and instill purpose in them of like, you're not done. Yeah. There's this incredible book called Halftime, and it's about the beginning of your life is searching after like success, and you're going after it with everything you have. And the second half of your life is purpose. Like now that you've learned all these things, you've grown in all these areas, how do you distill that down and share it with the younger generation? It's one of the massive goals of my life is to never stop, like learning, growing, and then grabbing that younger generation and saying, hey, can I buy you a coffee? Yeah. Hey, can I grab lunch with you and just share some of these things? I want to find that younger version of myself that was so hungry, that was getting overlooked, and say, hey, let's go grab a coffee and let me tell you some things that are going to help you be successful.
Yeah. Well, and that's really powerful. I mean, we talk about this at the Process Fixer, that truth is geographic.
Yeah.
You can't, I can't say that truth is an absolute unless I've been in the situation where that truth is relevant. And be able to actually say, you know what, is this applicable here? Yeah. Because I do think, and some of this comes from religious background as well, and I think so many of us are influenced by Judeo-Christian values in our society. There is a fine line and a delineation between black and white, good and evil in Judeo-Christian religions. But I think we all are starting to learn that everything is on a spectrum. Everything's on a spectrum. There's lots of gray areas. And that gray area might move for you at times throughout your life. It might be situationally, it might change. Sometimes the great Western philosopher Garth Brooks said, sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayers. Sometimes the thing I want so badly, when I look back on it later on, I go, oh my goodness, I am so glad that I didn't marry that person, or this didn't happen, or this didn't happen. And then the flip side of that is, many times the worst things that happen to us on the flip side turn out to be the best things that happen to us. So it's really difficult to judge when you just read the textbook. It's different when somebody walked it and they can go, wait a second, man, I know you like how she looks, but you don't get along with her. I know that you think this is the way that this is going to go, but let me just tell you, if you were 5 years down the road where I am, I can tell you that might not be the case.
It's funny, like what Sam said a second ago about giving back in the second half of your life, like that to me is legacy. People, we see successful billionaires, a lot of people talking about legacy. Ironically, thinking about it a lot, I've come to the conclusion that it is simply sharing knowledge. I think, a lot of people, you'll have older people talking about how bad it is that in society, you ask young kids what they want to be when they grow up, and it's YouTubers, right? Like instead of a firefighter, instead of whatever. But I was having this conversation with someone the other day, being a creator, because like there's a difference between an influencer who's selling and promoting things and a creator who's someone who is getting to follow their passions. The reason before you were a police officer was because everyone else in your family was this profession. You felt this obligation. Social media has allowed this freedom of, we used to talk about the starving artist. There is no better time in the world, in history, to be an artist. Even with artificial intelligence creating art.
I think you just made a lot of artists very happy here.
No, augmenting and enhancing yourself.
It came from the AI daddy. He said it. You heard it on camera.
We all just unlocked a whole new dimension to art. And so creating, to me, what you're doing right now with your podcast, with your content, I wish a lot more people who are in that second half of their life of it's time to give back.
Man, he's just taking a shot. What am I second? I just turned 50, everybody. So I guess if I'm only going to live to 100, I was expecting to live much longer, but he must know something I know.
Under the bus.
I was like, wow.
But I do wish that more people would create because it's just sharing your wisdom, your knowledge. Part of one of the problems in life is the same problems have always existed. They're usually presented in new, shiny wrappers, right? But it's all like, you're still building a company at its core is the same thing. Marketing, sales, whatever. And every new generation tries to start from scratch. No, let's learn from the people who've done it.
When you both were outside, it was interesting because the conversation I had with Tamara Kemper was so powerful because we talked about this idea that, and you've heard me talk about this, cuneiform, which is the first type of stone tablet that you could carry someplace. You could take information, wisdom from somebody else. You didn't have to memorize it and you could take it someplace else. And we have all these records of cuneiform out there, but they only fall into two categories. They're either maps that tell you where shit is, or they're SOPs that say, don't trust the women down by the bridge because they, after 3 or 4 glasses of wine, things are going to get bad. Or don't trust this merchant's scales. Or when you travel to this city, don't stay in the hotels in this area. And they were, many of them were merchant fathers to sons or children saying, here are the lessons that I have learned throughout my life. Let me explain it to you. Now, here's the crazy thing. We didn't build civilizations until we had that. Till we had that written down knowledge that wasn't just, this is what my dad said, but I could look back and say, oh, granddaddy Jehoshaphat also said, don't go to this part of town. Or grandma, give us a recipe for how we can cook the bread with this type of wheat. Those things are really important, and they do come from wisdom. They don't come from just, you can't write that down as a 16-year-old kid. You have to be parent or adult to someone younger.
I will tell you right now that in my personal experience, the best life hack to success isn't coming across a lot of money, isn't learning and specializing and developing all sorts of crazy skills. It isn't like your friends. It isn't your family. To me, it has been going to people who've gone so much farther than me. And it's usually just surrounding myself with people older than me. Even if that's just a few years, learning from people who are ahead of me, where I want to go, that's the easiest hack to success, in my opinion.
I can tell you time and time again, and I'll give me 1 second here. My mentors were all much older men, like in their 70s, 80s. One of my mentors was a well-known billionaire. I learned more from 6 months of having lunch with him once a week than I've learned anywhere else in my career. Like, I still have not unpacked all the nuggets that he gave me over the course of that period of time. And the great thing is then I can take that, apply that to my business, apply that to my world, and impart that back into guys like you that I hang out with on a regular basis, not just work-wise, but we get together and hang out and have drinks and do all that kind of stuff. And I love it because you still have the energy. Like, mine's starting to diminish a little bit, right? So that's why even with the company we're in together, I'm like, I want younger folks as partners in that because I might have the wisdom, but I got to go to bed at 8:30.
Ready? Let's go. Welcome to the process fixer. Help you see the bigger picture. Derek Maines is the elixir. Cut and waste away like scissor. Woo! Got a problem, he can solve it. He's an expert with the process, so for sure you'll see a profit. Bottom line profit. Analyze the work your people doing every day. Expose the inefficiencies getting in the way. Advise you how to automate, outsource, abbreviate, eliminate, innovate. Now there's more food up on your dinner plate.